Welcome to the Action Network Podcast, Buckets Edition, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. Glad to be with you. Thanks for joining us. We're going to preview the conference finals in the NBA playoffs as the Los Angeles Lakers take on the Denver Nuggets and the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics face off as a bubble Final Four rematch on both sides of the bracket. And to help me break it down, give some best bets, we got Jason Temp. You can know him from Volume Sports from Hoops Tonight. Jason, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing great. Matt, I can't tell you how excited I am to talk. I know we're opening with Heat Celtics, but I've been stuck in my Lakers echo chamber for a couple weeks now on Twitter, and I've got all this Lakers optimism. And what I want to hear is a good old-fashioned case for the Nuggets, and I'm excited to hash that out with you and get some quality perspective. I'm excited, man.
I'll try and make a case for the number one seed in the Western Conference. I'll try and do that a little bit later on, but I want to start. We're going to go ahead. We're going to give best bets for each series, and then we'll break down kind of how we see it going. Basketball heavy podcast on this one with Jason. Let's start with the Eastern Conference as the Boston Celtics, fresh off a thrilling Game 7 win over the Philadelphia 76ers, who flopped like dead fish. I don't know if can dead fish flop? If they can, they definitely, that's what it looked like. A horrible ending for the Sixers, but a great win for the Celtics. Jason Tatum shrugs off the Game 5 struggles, or Game 6 struggles. Obviously, he showed up late in that game and then was phenomenal. 51 in the closeout. Absolutely incredible performance. Celtics huge favorites in the series. Minus 550 on the series. Price pure. Heat plus 390. Jason, what's your best bet for Celtics versus Heat?
All right, Matt, my best bet would be Jason Tatum minus 180 for series MVP. And the case is pretty simple. I think Boston wins. If you look at the way that Boston's offensive usage is broken down over the course of this playoff run, I just don't think Jaylen Brown's going to average enough points in order to get series MVP. We've also seen Philly do this, and I think we'll see Miami do something different. Or something similar. I wouldn't be surprised if they deployed Jimmy Butler on Jaylen Brown as a little bit more of a strength versus strength type of matchup. And then you will see someone like Caleb Martin guarding Jason Tatum with a lot of ball pressure. And I think the idea there is I think Miami wants Jason Tatum to take a bunch of off the dribble jump shots and things along those lines. I just think he naturally ends up being the scoring leader of the series. And quite frankly, like, I really do view Game 6 as a breakthrough moment of sorts for Jason Tatum. I mean, he had a rough pull-up jump shooting season all year. He shot below 30% on pull-up threes, struggled a little bit to start the postseason. That kind of felt to me like breaking through. And I think that is evidenced by the way he just attacked Game 7 from start to finish. So I think Jason Tatum's in a good groove. I think he's got a good chance to lead the team in scoring by a significant margin. I think Boston wins. So if you wanted to bet Boston to win the series, but do so with better odds, I think Tatum minus 180 for series MVP makes a lot of sense.
Okay, I like that one. I'm going to take my best bet is going to be the Miami Heat plus 2.5 on an alternate series spread minus 134. So this is a nice confluence of two things I very much enjoy when I'm betting these series. One is that the market is forced into a window where it has to edge this in Boston's favor. There's no way for the power rating for them to be able to accurately push up the Heat enough. Like, they just can't get Miami up high enough to catch the team that was the title favorite up until basically late February, and then became the title favorite immediately again after the Bucks were eliminated. Like, the Celtics became title favorites when Malcolm Brogdon signed, or when they traded for Malcolm Brogdon in the preseason. They were the favorites all the way through until the Bucks took over the number one seed, and then they reclaimed it. There's no way for the book to account for this. So we've got good value, I think, from a perspective of getting value on Miami. And then this returns to the same thing that I bet when I bet on the Sixers plus 2.5 versus the Celtics. Boston's a great team. Like, they really are. They're a great team. They're versatile and they're deep and they're switchable and they're sound and they have so many shooters, and Tatum's great and Brown's great. They screw around. This team screws around, and they screwed around 3 times versus the Sixers and almost lost a series that honestly they probably should have wrapped up in 5 or 6 games. They're going to do it again here because Miami is an undead monster. What happens is, in my opinion, matchups can determine how close a series is, but not who wins it. So the Celtics are better. The Celtics have edges. The Celtics are going to win the series. But the Heat are going to make this painful. It's what they do, and the Celtics make it painful on themselves. So I'm going to take plus 2.5. All I need is 2 wins. I don't expect Miami to win. One thing I will say, another one I very much like is correct score after 2 games. Heat 2-1 plus 350.
Ooh.
I actually really like. If I could parlay Heat 2-1 plus 350 with Celtics to win the series, I'd be all in on that because Jason, I think the Heat are taking game 1. I think the Celtics are going to find themselves once again being like, what is wrong with this team? And then they're going to win and make the finals again.
I am 1,000% with you on this one. I love that Miami plus 2.5 games. To me, it's half the messing around, which is absolutely true. I think you really saw that identity get solidified against the Hawks. Like they cannot put teams away, and they have not put a team away since the Brooklyn Nets last year. To me, it's also that, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, but to me, Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. I think he's the best in terms of making, in 2 ways, making other teams play to their weaknesses, but also covering the weaknesses for his specific team. And with Boston, you can bait them into some things with heavy ball pressure because they have a bunch of guys who like to take pull-up jump shots. If you go with heavy ball pressure and channel them into rim protection, they tend to make poor rim decisions and they can get stagnant, especially when with Miami switching the way that they do from time to time. I believe that Eric Spoelstra is going to make these dudes play to their ugliest tendencies, which is naturally going to end up extending the series. I love the way you pointed that out. Like, the matchup might dictate how long the series goes, but the better team is usually going to win, right? And my favorite example of that is like that 2015 Cavs. Like, LeBron's a nightmare matchup for them, and his ability to slow down the pace and make them get out of rhythm and to attack matchups all over the floor. But there was just never enough juice to have a real chance to win that series. And so that makes a ton of sense to me. They're going to make them uncomfortable. They're going to switch and stagnate. They're going to run them off the 3-point line and try to channel them into help at the rim and bait them into bad decisions. To me, it's almost a guarantee that this series goes long.
I have from earlier in the playoffs when they first posted ECF, I grabbed Jaylen Brown at a really long number. He's still a very long number here based off of kind of what you talked about. He's still plus 500. That's for finals MVP. For ECF, he's all the way down to plus 250. What's interesting here is the idea of Butler on Brown is not something that I considered, and it's a really good point by you. This morning at shoot around at practice, rather, Bam Adebayo said that, he's willing and able, he is open to guarding Jason Tatum at times, if that's the matchup that they want to go to, which makes a lot of sense if Horford starts and they don't go double big, right? If you don't have to have Bam on Robert Williams because you're going to just need him for the size, then you can probably get away with Caleb Martin on Horford. Horford's not going to post up Caleb Martin and just be like, go to work. That's that. If he were to, the Heat would be like, sure, we will accept that. That's fine with us. And so the question, if Butler does guard Jaylen Brown, obviously that gets a lot harder, especially with Brown's struggles in terms of his handle, right? Jimmy's going to be really physical up into him, cause him disruptions. He'll get him away from his spots, most especially, and make it harder on Jaylen. I do kind of like Jaylen in terms of Jason Tatum in game 7, basically got past all of the issues that he's had with his pull-up jumper, but that's been a problem for him over the last really year since he suffered the wrist injury last year, which was an under talked about kind of thing.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, he had a wrist injury last year. It was like real under the radar. I actually heard about it early, like there were whispers about it earlier on, but it wasn't anything I felt confident in the bet. And then like after the finals, it was like, yeah, no, he had a pretty bad wrist sprain and had to recover from it. And that's one of the reasons why Boston fans have kind of been like had an eye on some of his pull-up shooting is he's had like wrist injuries tend to take a long time to heal. Nikola Jokic is proof of that. He's dealt with that as well. So Tatum's pull-up numbers haven't been awesome. He was elite in game 7 when he absolutely cooked Joel Embiid. But like Jaylen Brown's going to have a lot more of those opportunities, especially the Heat are playing more drop than I'm used to them seeing. Like they are no longer like we're just going to switch everything on you team. Like that's what this was in 2020, honestly. And even last year this was just 2 teams being like, we're going to switch everything constantly, just switch. And it's all going to be tough one-on-one basketball because that's how it goes. Both of these teams have embraced a shallow drop a lot more as this has gone on. But even then, I kind of trust Jalen a little bit more to attack those kind of spots. I don't mind taking Jalen there. My question for you would be, if they do move Bam into guarding more of Tatum when it's one big and Horford, how do you see that matchup kind of playing out?
I don't, again, I understand Bam holding up well when they do switch for
Yeah,
whatever reason. But to me, I want to get underneath Tatum and Brown. I want guards and ball pressure. To me, that would be the best way to kind of play them into their worst tendencies. So like and for the record, I prefer running drop coverage against teams that aren't great pull-up jump shooting teams.
right.
And so with these, Tatum Brown pick and rolls, I would want Bam Adebayo kind of like baiting them into tougher pull-up mid-range jump shots, especially with Tatum, who doesn't like to take them anymore. Now, like, did you see that crazy stat I tweeted out the other day that James Harden was attempting 4 times as many mid-range jump shots as Jason Tatum in this playoff? Right? It just doesn't make any sense, right? And that's another big part of why I like the Jimmy Butler on Jaylen Brown matchup is like Jaylen Brown loves to use physicality to get to these short little fadeaways over both shoulders around 10, 15 feet, pull up jump shots at 10, 15 feet. Jimmy's got more capability of bumping him off of his base in those situations. But as far as Bam goes, yeah, like I think it'd be a waste to put him on the perimeter against those guys, especially if they plan on running more drop. I would want ball pressure, ball pressure, ball pressure. And Caleb Martin, to me, has actually done a really nice job in this postseason run of getting up underneath ball handlers and making them feel uncomfortable. I think that would be the best path is just challenge their handle, funnel them into the paint, make them try to make good rim decisions against Bam Adebayo, counting on the consistent rotations on the back end that you always get from a Spoelstra team. Spoelstra's going to randomly throw zone at him too to try to throw him off. Like I'm so confident that we're going to have extended stretches of this series where the Celtics look out of sorts because that's just what Eric Spoelstra does. Remember that game last year? I think it was game 4 where it was like, oh, we're just going to pick them up at half court all game long. And they're just going to turn it over every possession and we're going to get out, like there's going to be extended stretches where they look like they're out of sorts.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is the market can't account for this gap. And also, I will say this: the market is probably not accounting for Tyler Hero. This cap, I think, to me, this cap reflects that Tyler Hero is still out, and I'm like, Hero probably returns at some point in the series.
Is he coming back? You think?
I think so. Guys get over fractures a lot easier than they get over sprains, right? Which is a crazy but true thing. Just like you break something and you're able to come back from it. And I think that if he's able to bring something, just a little bit of scoring, because they're going to need it. Looking at the Heat scoring is it's really funny. So, for example, the first 3 games versus Milwaukee, their effective field goal percentage. And if you don't know, if you're not a big stats guy, why would you look at who wants to look at a graph in a hoops convo? If you're that kind of person, if you're like 55% or better, it's like that's okay. If you're in the 60s, that's really good. The first 3 games of the Buck series were 68.5 for the Heat, 63.1, 63.1. Here are the last 4 games for the Heat in the Knicks series: 42.8, 54.7, 49.4, 44.5. Like the Heat basically got the shooting that they needed to pull off the upset as an 8 seed, got a Knicks team that was not probably, in my opinion, really shouldn't have been there. And then they got banged up and worn out by Miami and got out coached by Spoelstra. And then like the Heat offense went back to what they've been all season, but it didn't matter because they already had a team on the ropes by the time that they got there. So like the thing is in this series, I honestly, and I'd be curious on your thoughts on this, Jason. I think we're going to see a lot of blowouts because I think there's going to be games where Boston is composed and the offense is functioning and they're hitting shots and it's Celtics by 15. And then there's going to be games when the Celtics look like absolute disasters. They're turning the ball over and the Heat have I think the variance in this series is going to be pretty high, which is odd because the Heat had a record number of clutch games this season. Clutch, I think, definitely leans towards Miami. Like if Miami's going to win the series, they need more clutch games, but I kind of think we're going to see a lot of games where it's very tilted.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a couple of Knicks fans that are on our team at the Volume, and I had one of them message me like late in the series. I think it was during game 5 or game 6, and he's like, man, like I just can't believe how well Miami's been shooting in this series. And I'm like, they're not really shooting all that well. If you look at it like this, like I'm like, you must be forgetting the Milwaukee Bucks series where Jimmy Butler was making every damn pull up jump shot that he
Yes,
took. Like
everything.
there was like the part of the reason that Jalen Brunson possession took place where he had the ball down 2 with 14 seconds left or whatever. Big part of that was Jimmy Butler got to a couple of late pull up jump shots that he was hitting against Milwaukee that he was not hitting against the Knicks. I agree. I think that we'll see Celtics blowouts. I just don't know that Miami has the firepower to blow out this Celtics team. And maybe I'm wrong about that. And at the same time, like I think that on the Miami front, if Miami wins the series, which is I think you and I both agree is an extreme long shot, you're gonna have a game 2 from the 2011 finals, Dallas Miami type of situation. Like there's gonna be some game that Boston has control over of and they're up 14 with 7 minutes left, and the next thing you know, it's like Missoula is calling a timeout because it's a 2-point game after another Jimmy Butler pick at half court run out dunk. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna have to steal one, and then to me, like that's kind of a smart veteran team thing as well, where it's like, oh, it's game 2, we've already stole game 1, let's punt and not waste our older legs trying to keep this game close. We'll let this one go, kind of thing. So I could see some blowouts in this series. I just don't think Miami has the firepower.
I should be clear. A Celtics blowout looks like 30 points. A Miami blowout looks like 12. That's a blowout.
Exactly.
12 points. Is Kevin Love playable in this series?
See, this is the thing that freaks me out just in general with Boston, should they make the finals if the Lakers get there. In my opinion, the one big weakness with the Lakers roster is containing dribble penetration with teams that can space them out. That consistently was a problem even down the stretch of the season in the regular season when they were trying to fight for play-in positioning. I freak out about their 5-out lineups with Al Horford and Anthony Davis just being further away from the paint and them needing to contain dribble penetration. And Boston's going to be able to put Miami in some similar predicaments. That said, like you could have said the same thing about like, oh, is Kevin Love going to be able to stay on the floor as New York is running just a million Jalen Brunson pick and rolls? And it's like, actually they did, is Kevin Love going to be able to handle downhill rim pressure from Giannis and Drew Holiday? It's like Eric Spoelstra just has found a way to make it work. I think in large part by simplifying his role. Like you could tell they were really focused on him just being a dominant rebounder in that last series. Like as long as you box out, we'll cover for you elsewhere on the floor, like those kinds of things. And so I have a feeling that Spoelstra will find a way. Maybe it's through a zone. Like maybe it'll just because Miami zone is like the only zone I've seen that actually works.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just because they practice it more or what the deal is, but I don't know if it's zone. I don't know if it's just a lot of help and pick and roll coverage or just really good rotations on the back end. But I have a feeling they'll find a way to keep him on the floor.
A lot of this too is the Celtics just don't run a lot of pick and roll. Like that's just not who they are. They're built a lot more off of perimeter action, moving the ball side to side, and then isolation with Tatum and Brown. And so, in those situations, I don't know who the player is that's going to get, a Love on him to be able to really take advantage of that. If Smart ends up on him on a switch, if they run off ball screens, and sure, like Marcus Smart might attack him, he'll probably live with that. Like there's all these kind of situations where they can probably get by. On the offensive end, it'll be, I think, just kind of as interesting in terms of what role Love plays if he can space the floor a little bit to be able to get some of Boston from not collapsing at the rim. That's obviously, I think, really important. It is really interesting in that the Sixer series was so demanding in terms of the mechanisms of pick and roll with Harden and Embiid and how much like they were. One of the reasons I like Boston to win the series after Game 5 was I had no idea what they were doing in Game 5. Like their defensive coverage on Joel Embiid was mind-boggling. Like, hey, Joel, would you like the exact shot that made you MVP all game? We're just gonna give it to you. How about we just give it to you the shot that made you MVP? We'll give it to you all game. And then they just tightened it up in 6 and 7. They did a really good job in both Game 6 and 7 of either blitzing the ball handler and bringing the help side defender to tag Embiid on the short roll, or just hedge and recover and being really cognizant of where he wanted to get that ball. This Heat team is very different in terms of the dynamics of how they run the offense. And so much of this, it really is. It's funny. Like Sixers Celtics was like a tactical matchup of this versus that, and this, and like, how are you? Okay, you got to do this and then this, and then you got to be here, and you got to be in this position versus Harden, and make sure that you can recover, and you got to dare PJ Tucker, but don't let him get to the. And then this series is basically just like, I don't know, man. Jimmy Butler might just do some shit. Like, it's just kind of wild. Is there? Let me ask you this question: what is more? These two situations we agree are unlikely, but I do want to get your thoughts on it. Is it more likely that Jimmy Butler wins conference finals MVP in a loss, or that someone other than Jimmy Butler wins conference finals MVP for the Heat?
You mean for the Celtics?
No.
For the Heat. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, isn't Bam Adebayo like plus 4,400 or something insane?
Something like that. Something ridiculous.
I would think. I don't think it's. To me, it's like the point totals are just like, even if Boston loses the series, Tatum's going to average 28. Like we can talk all we want about the approach, and like there are some shot charts. There are some games where I watch a bad Tatum game and I pull up the shot chart and I'm like, bro, it's all above the break threes and shot. Like, dude, have some variance in your game so that you're a little more less predictable. But the value is, and this is where the analytical approach has its advantages, is even in that kind of limited approach, he's just going to get to 28 points just because of shot value and his ability to get to the foul line, right? So like, I just don't see a universe where Boston wins the series and Tatum is averaging 28 and doesn't win the conference finals MVP. So from that standpoint, I would think I think it would be pretty unlikely that Jimmy would win as a loser.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the Western Conference.
Oh, here we go.
Lakers, Nuggets. I'm based here in Denver. Not a Nuggets fan, but I do cover the team. Lakers, as a 7 seed, have made the conference finals. We'll get into all sorts of stuff with this fascinating series. The Nuggets have never beaten the Lakers in a conference finals series. They've never beaten the Lakers in the playoff series. They are 0 versus the Lakers all time. What's your best bet for Lakers Nuggets?
Okay. I would bet Lakers 4-2 at plus 400.
Okay.
I think that this team kind of reminds me a little bit of Boston in that they have the wildest oscillations between their best punch and their worst punch.
Yep.
With Boston, I think it stems from arrogance. With the Lakers, I think it stems from energy conservation. I don't think it's a coincidence that not only have their series followed identical paths in terms of wins and losses, but they followed identical paths in terms of the close games. The same games have been close. Game 1, game 4, right? And then pretty much everything else has been blowouts. And I think it stems from LeBron James and Anthony Davis and these extended stretches of physical exertion versus when they're more in a coasting type of mood. So if the Lakers were to win the series, I think it's extremely likely that it's in 6. There's even a wilder bet you can make, plus 2,300 for exact series path. Lakers win game 1, Nuggets win game 2. Lakers win 3 and 4, Nuggets win game 5. Lakers win game 6. I have a feel like, because I have a feeling the Lakers will bring a great effort tomorrow night, which would mean that game 2, it'd be very difficult if they fell down 0-1 to come back again and bring that energy, because they just haven't really brought consecutive dominant efforts yet in this postseason. And just what that means for LeBron and Anthony Davis and their bodies. I'll say this though, because I'm really excited to hear your take here, because I have a ton of Lakers optimism. I believe in this team. I do. That said, I know I'm a fan. I joke on my show, this is my one blind spot because my childhood fanhood of LeBron and the way that just sways everything that I see the game. I am terrified of this Nuggets team. I have so much respect for Nikola Jokic. I think there's a decent chance that he just resoundingly outplays Anthony Davis. And if he does, I think this could be over quickly, which is why my other best bet that I put was Nuggets to win the series in 5 at plus 410.
Interesting.
And the path there would be the Nuggets win 1 and 2, and then they get a split in LA, and then they close out in game 5 at home. I think if the Nuggets win this series, I think it's quick. And if Jokic outplays Anthony Davis to the point where he's in foul trouble, or they have to consistently send a ton of help in post-ups and in roll situations, I think they get picked apart by the shooting, and I think it becomes an issue. But if Anthony Davis stonewalls Jokic, I think the depth of the Lakers roster, the LeBron James element, I think could carry the Lakers through the day.
So I think a bet I would recommend, if this is how you're feeling, if you're a Lakers better, to me, the best bet is Lakers to win game 1, Lakers to win the series at plus 280. You get almost 3-1 on essentially, this is like, there's so many reasons to take this. The Lakers, as you mentioned, this has been the script for them. Balls to the wall game 1, steal game 1 on the road, completely surrender and crater in game 2. Don't care. Got the split, gonna go back, save them legs. Go back home, balls to the wall game 3, put the pressure on them in game 4, give up game 5, finish it in 6. That's been their script through 2 rounds. If the Lakers take game 1, the Nuggets now have to win on the road. They have been a bad road team all season. They finished under 500. They are under 500, 5-8 when Nikola Jokic is a dog on the road. They are 1-2 in the playoffs in that situation. It is the question. A lot of this does get into what is more likely, that the Lakers steal a road game or the Nuggets steal a road game. And if you believe in the Lakers enough to think that they will steal one, then you should absolutely be on Lakers game 1 plus 280. You can also do score after 3 games, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't want to go into exactly game 1. If you think they might lose game 1, but then come back and hit them in game 2. You can also get Lakers 2-1 at plus 186. That gives you a little bit more room there. But I do think that plus 280 in game 1 before the Nuggets have a chance to adjust, I think is really crucial. Neither of these is my best bet for the series, because my best bet for the series is going to be good old fashioned -1.5 for the Denver Nuggets, plus 154. I get the number 1 seed in the Western Conference with home court to win in less than 7 games. I talked about this on buckets, and I want to go through it right now. A big reason why, if you say like, you don't even think the Lakers can push it to 7, here's the thing. Everyone that tells you that they're taking X team in 7 means I don't know. That's what that means. It means they're basically a coin flip. And if they take the home team, they're like, well, it's a coin flip, but this team's better and they're at home. Thanks. Bold stuff. Thanks for really laying it out there. Most series don't go 7. If they do go 7, it's because of things like what we saw in the Sixers series, right? Where it's like the Celtics lose game 1 without Joel Embiid playing and then completely melt in game 5. Most scenarios, they do end in 6. And for me, I do believe in the Nuggets in home court. They've been so good there all year. They've been so great in the playoffs. They are such a beast. The series is tough for me. It really is, because what this is history versus the basketball side. The history of this says the Lakers are going to win. The Lakers always win. That's what they do. You could have bet, my favorite NBA betting stat, since 2000, you could bet blind the Lakers to win the finals every year since 2000, including a 5-year stretch, which was the worst in franchise history. And you'd be up money right now. That's how much they win at the numbers that they get. That said, what I do think is interesting, though, is there is like this idea of, that's the narrative side of this. So we get past like all the basketball stuff. This gets into like, okay, but the Lakers and like they win, and LeBron, and do they win? If you go back, the Lakers were favored in most of those series because they were great teams. If you go back, here are the 4 times that LeBron has won as an underdog. He has won in the underdog as an underdog in a series. He's only been a dog outside of the finals versus the Warriors a handful of times. But the times that he's won as a dog, the 2018 Raptors conference semifinals. That's right. The Raptors were favored. This is where we throw our heads back and laugh in that series. The 2016 Warriors, obviously they were dogs in that series and 3-1 comeback. The 2012 Thunder series, they were actually dogs in that first Heat championship. Surprising but true. They were actually dogs of that Thunder team. And the 2007 Pistons conference semifinals when he went.
Well, they were dogs this year against the Warriors too, weren't they?
They were. I'm sorry. This is before the season.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
When is LeBron won as a dog before the season? So like, the history has kind of said that LeBron has won when he's been a favorite, and when he's lost, it's been because the other team is better. And that to me does factor into this. Is like, the books still believe that the Nuggets are power rated better. And the reason that is because the Nuggets have been better. It'd be one thing if it was like, well, the Nuggets were number 1, but they've been only okay in the playoffs, but they've been great in the playoffs.
Yes.
I'm really fascinated by the argument of trying to figure out which of these teams is more real, because the temptation is to be like, The Lakers just beat the defending champions who had never lost in a Western Conference playoff series. The counter argument is the Lakers just beat a team that went 7 games with the Kings and maybe should have lost, had a very middling offensive rating the entire season in the Warriors, and we're terrible on the road all season. Now the Nuggets are not good. The Warriors were terrible. On the flip side, it's the Nuggets faced the Suns with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and a whole lot of nothing. And then they faced the Wolves, who no one really thinks is serious. I actually think the Wolves probably were like a pretty like a tougher matchup than probably it seems on paper with a lot of the stuff that gets into this. My biggest tactical question for you, I think you're right in the Davis thing, where another reason if you're looking at Lakers and you're like, well, I don't want to bet number of games. I just want to bet the Lakers to win, but that number isn't great for a 7 seed at plus 130. I do think you can get value on betting Anthony Davis to win final Eastern Conference or Western Conference Finals MVP, because to me that really is like so much of the series is if Anthony Davis is the best player in the series, the Lakers are going to win because it means that Jokic was not able to dominate and Davis was hitting mid-range jumpers. If Nikola Jokic is the best player in the series, the Nuggets are going to win because that means the Lakers couldn't solve him. And to me, that really is what so much of this comes down to. Can Jokic pull Davis out far enough to help the back line so the Lakers can't just clog the paint as they've dominated so much in the playoffs? Can Jokic hit tough contested shots over Davis just to try and break a little bit of what they want to do? There's been some numbers floating today about how much the Lakers doubled Jokic in the regular season. Regular season's a different animal. I want to ask you that question. How much do you expect the Lakers to dare Jokic to beat Davis one-on-one and stay home versus how much do you think they bring help both in pick and roll and post-ups?
I think it starts with them leaving him on an island. I went back and watched as much of and all, of course, as is usually the case with this Lakers season, all the footage involves pre-deadline stuff. But I saw like Anthony Davis has a little bit of a high center of gravity and Jokic doesn't have too much trouble bumping him off of his spots. That freaks me out. So I think that it's going to be an absolute battle as it pertains to Anthony Davis trying to figure him out over the course of the series. And that's kind of where I see it. It's less to me about game 1, game 2, but at some point over the course of the series, can Anthony Davis figure out how to handle Jokic on an island? Because from there, I think if they can guard the Murray Jokic pick and roll 2-on-2 or Jokic post ups 1-on-1, I actually really like the Lakers' chances in the half court to hang and be able to give this offense some problems. The problem is Jokic gives Anthony Davis issues on a couple of specific fronts. Anthony Davis really struggles with physical offensive rebounding bigs that can knock him off a position when he offers some sort of help to a guard, right? So like he waves a hand at a pull-up shooting guard and the dude just ducks in and hits him out of the lane, gets an offensive rebound. That can give him some problems. Anthony Davis can struggle in transition, running the floor. And Jokic, I mean, the first matchup they had this year in Denver, Jokic straight up dominated Anthony Davis just in transition by pushing the ball up the floor, sprinting up and down the floor for cross matches and getting quick post ups because Anthony Davis wasn't matched up. He's got a bunch of unique things that will actually cause Anthony Davis problems. Now, you said hitting mid-range jump shots. You know, it's so interesting. And it's, to me, what makes this Laker team so unique. Anthony Davis can get away with devoting the lion's share of his resources to the defensive end because of the offensive versatility of this roster. I am really curious to see, in my opinion, I actually put this down as one of my best bets for LeBron to average more than 5.8 assists per game. You can get that at minus 115 right now. And I look at it from the standpoint of the Nuggets pick and roll coverage and the fact that they're probably, they had Aaron Gordon going over screens often. And in a traditional drop coverage, Jokic a little bit high, kind of like that similar high drop to what they were running against the Suns with a lot of paint attention behind him. Now, as I'm watching that footage, I'm seeing Patrick Beverley on the weak side and I'm seeing Troy Brown Jr. on the weak side. So like they're able to load up in a little bit of a different manner in that footage. But to me, like, I think you can get away on the offensive end running everything through LeBron and the guards with token post-ups and touches for Anthony Davis, which allows him to devote his attention to Jokic on the defensive end. So to me, it's literally that simple. You laid it out perfect. If Jokic can control defensively or if Anthony Davis can control Jokic on the defensive end of the floor, I think that's enough to win the series. But like legitimately, Jokic is equipped in a way that attacks a lot of AD's specific weaknesses. So I would not be the least bit surprised if this ends up looking a little bit like Hakeem in the mid 90s, just running through all the bigs.
I know the answer to this, but I'm very curious to get your thoughts on it. How different is the Jokic Davis matchup from 2020 in the bubble?
I think it's completely fundamentally different. I think Jokic was ascending. But I'm seeing a player that has a command of the game that he didn't have back then, specifically as it pertains to knowing when it's time to score the basketball.
Yeah.
One of my biggest things that I used to get critical of Jokic with in the past, and one of my favorite examples of that this year was the Embiid game, is like sometimes the game calls for you to be the aggressor. And I think that clicked a lot in the Sun series in particular, where he was just like, you know what, my team's best chance to score here is I'm just bigger than all these dudes. So I'm going to get to these little pop shots and hook shots in the lane. Ironically, that's the thing that's missing from Embiid, in my opinion, is he just doesn't have a reliable push shot, hook shot in the lane that he can go to. That's not a jumper the way that Jokic does. But I think Jokic is twice the player he was in 2020. What do you think?
Yeah, the control of the game is a really good way to put it. It's really, to me, like what defines greatness in the NBA is how much do you control the game. And Jokic's ability to, like, KD's talked about this in his post-game press conferences about Jokic, and other guys have mentioned it. You can't speed him up. You can't speed him up. You can't slow him down. Everything is what he wants to do. You try and bring a double to get him a little frantic. He's going to read it and he's going to make a pass. And oftentimes the biggest thing with this passing, and it's actually going to be pretty, usually it's not, because playoffs are pretty simple. I think it's going to be a little bit more complicated in this series. One of the best things about Jokic's passing, he doesn't just make what I would refer to as the Houston Rockets pass, which is like, oh, they collapse, I'm going to kick to a spot up shooter. Is he anticipates the coverage, the closeout to it, fakes it, and then finds the cutter underneath on the second sequence. And like those little plays are like so high level, and they're very difficult to get to. It's funny is like the Lakers are so good at the base stuff that they're going to have to go to some of these secondary mechanisms to get past all the Lakers' very good rotations and sense of spacing and things like that. What's interesting, I think, is, and this still remains true, in the playoffs, when Nikola Jokic scores more than 38 points, I include this because like he had a 39-point game, which is basically the same as a 40. The Nuggets are 1-3 in the playoffs when Jokic scores 39 points or more. So the idea of making him a scorer has a lot of validity to it. Now, one of the problems here is like, if he's scoring, it's usually because the other guys aren't hitting shots. So there's a correlation here, right? Which is like, if other guys are scoring, he's happy to get 25 to 30, even 20 to 25, and rack up 15 assists. Like that's what he'd like to play. Like Jokic's ideal game would probably be like, well, honestly, it'd probably be like 10, 20, and 20. But like, if he's scoring, it's usually because it's needed, and it will be needed in the series. Like you're absolutely right that it is needed in the series. By the way, when he has more than 10 assists, 6-4 in the playoffs. That question of Davis and if he can handle him alone, fouls are also going to be a big part of this too, man. Like
both
Jokic
ways
got in really bad foul trouble in 2020. The calls were, I think, not great, like in general, but that's not a surprise. Like this is the thing with the Lakers, is like Lakers fans will say they're really physical. This is what they do. They draw fouls on you with their physicality. Absolutely true. It's about the degree to which they do. Austin
They're
Reeves.
Grifters. They're grifters,
Austin
man.
Reeves is a guy that I think is going to be really important in the series. Like we go through the guys that are going to be important in the series. I think it's like Aaron Gordon and Austin Reeves. I do have this question for you. I didn't think D'Lo was going to be playable versus the Warriors, and the fact that the Warriors couldn't play him off the floor, I think, is a huge indictment of where Golden State was. Is D'Lo playable in this series?
I would imagine so. He actually competed pretty well defensively. I thought there were a handful of missed box outs, missed rotations, bad transition defense possessions, but like he held up pretty decently well against Andrew Wiggins in isolation situations. I thought he's kind of underrated big, like he's a little bit big and strong. I've always been more concerned with D'Angelo Russell and his shot selection and decision making on the offensive end of the floor. The Lakers have actually managed to keep him playable. I've never actually, in my time watching D'Angelo Russell with the Lakers, thought, man, he's absolutely killing us on the defensive end of the floor. Now that remains to be seen with this Nuggets team, but again, that to me comes down to the Anthony Davis matchup. Like if we have to guard the pick and roll 3-on-2, and we have to guard the post 2-on-1, and D'Lo's running around in rotation, I think it could be a problem. But I'm not, and this to me is, I think this Laker team in general holds up pretty well against ancillary offensive pieces. This has been a theme for them since 2020. But like they defended Klay Thompson phenomenally well.
Yeah.
Right. Like they defended Jaren Jackson. I thought they defended pretty well for the most part. They figured out how to stop Desmond Bane by the end of the Memphis Grizzlies series. Like their guards compete. Ham usually has a scheme that works for that specific player and his weaknesses. I'm less worried about D'Angelo Russell and more worried about, can the Lakers play their wings?
Yeah.
Because with Jared Vanderbilt, it's an offensive limitation. I believe that if Jared Vanderbilt starts, I wouldn't even be surprised if you saw Nikola Jokic guard him from time to time. And then you put Aaron Gordon on Anthony Davis front and bracket, in the post, or just straight up double. You're gonna, and then with the Rui Hachimura thing, it's the locking and trailing. Denver has so many screening actions that they run for Michael Porter Jr., Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and for Jamal Murray, and Rui struggles with screen navigation. And so that was how the Warriors basically played him out of that series, was he couldn't run off the screens. And then if you can't play your two forwards, they have to downsize and they have to go to the 3-guard lineups. And then they start to really struggle with rebounding, and they gave up 12 offensive rebounds with their 3-guard lineup in the first half against the Warriors. So I'm like, Darvin's so good at reading the guards and being like, oh, D'Lo doesn't have it tonight, we're going heavy on Dennis and Austin. Oh, Dennis doesn't have it tonight, we're going heavy on D'Lo and Austin, But with the forwards, if Jokic can play them off of the floor, that's where I think the Lakers could run into some problems, because now when they go small, LeBron James engaged to cover for that lack of size, which can be a weakness for that group because they only want to bring it when they have to. And so that I'd be keeping an eye on Rui and Vando.
Yeah, on the other side, the Nuggets don't know what to do with LeBron. Like they're not going to say that, but I'll just tell you, like, they don't know what to do. Like AG is going to guard him, but if he runs, their base coverage is 1-4 switch, 1-5 at level. LeBron is the best ball handler in the league at this point at reversing to the weak side. Like it's a laser every single time.
I'm sorry to cut you off, actually, because this is directly related to that. Did you feel like the Phoenix Suns left meat on the bone picking you guys apart in pick and roll with weak side kick passes?
I think what really kind of happened was we found collectively, I think we found out that Devin isn't there yet in that pass. Kevin's never been really good at it, and I don't think Kevin's ever, like, I think Kevin's a really good passer in versus drop coverage. Like, he can make multiple reads, but versus blitz coverage, he's always kind of trying to like force his way out of it. Devin's a really gifted passer, but we did kind of see that heavy pressure. He was really frustrated with it. Like, it's kind of funny because it goes back to the summer league don't double me thing, but like Devin really struggled making that. Now he did it, and then they found Landry Shamet, and like Shamet had that huge game 4 where he has 17 in part because of those shots. I don't know that there's that much meat on the bone, because I think from an NBA perspective, you're always going to be like, I'm going to take what the defense gives me. Right. And the Nuggets have gotten pretty good in their containment there. The problem is just like, look, you can apply pressure, but it's LeBron. He's 6'8" and a monster and one of the smartest basketball players ever. And able, like, there was a time 2011-ish where he would get in a lot of trouble jump passing. And then like by like 2014, that was gone. Like he was like, he can jump pass whenever he wants to, right? Like just fading away, jump pass, overhead, boom, laser to the corner, kick out corner 3. And if that's D'Lo or Austin Reeves or Lonnie Walker or Rui, any of those guys, that's a high percentage look for a Lakers team that needs high percentage looks in this series. Like there is, again, we get back to like the interesting thing about these two paths. And a very easy thing is the Nuggets have not faced anything defensively like these Lakers. The Lakers have faced nothing like what they're going to see offensively from this Denver team.
Of course.
Right.
I agree.
So they got to get their offensive efficiency up, which is why I think that that's really key. On switches, I do think that LeBron's going to be able to hunt. He's going to be able to hunt down Jamal. And if you hunt down Jamal, do you send a naked double? If you send the naked double, you wind up in the same situation where it's like, okay, who's open, right? The Lakers have enough scorers to make it at least like to be able to generate enough offense. Their half court offense still isn't elite. It's just not. Like, it's not. This is not an elite half court offense. They're going to need to create turnovers and force it in transition, where Denver's been really weak. They've been good in these playoffs, but that's a very big weakness for them. And then the Lakers proved in 2020 they can win that way. Just push the ball and score. But I am really curious to see what they do with LeBron, because you have these two kind of competing factors of the Nuggets don't have a good option if he's able to get Aaron Gordon shook loose of him, and even Aaron Gordon's going to have trouble because it's LeBron, versus this is not the LeBron James that we've seen over the last couple, like for the last 2 decades. This is a lesser version because of the foot injury and age. And like that gap is probably going to determine a lot of the series. If he summons the power, he can get them through the series. If he can't, then the Nuggets offensive floor is high enough maybe for them to win.
Well, again, if it's game 6 late in the series, I have no doubt that LeBron can tap into it for one game. Sure. But yeah, like expecting him to dominate the series, I think is unrealistic at this point. To me, hedging is going to be a huge part in this series because I believe that LeBron demonstrated in game 6 and has demonstrated in several stretches over the course of this postseason that he is still an absolute handful in the post. But that said, Aaron Gordon's a much bigger and stronger player than Andrew Wiggins is. And I actually really like that matchup for Denver in the post if LeBron tries to work there. But I think he's going to be doing a ton of what he did towards the end of the series, which is calling up Steph Curry's man, Jordan Poole's man, into high screens and trying to get downhill or get a switch there. And that's where you have to take advantage of the fact that Austin in particular, D'Angelo and Dennis are not great movement shooters. They're not guys that can quickly pick and pop to the 3-point line and get their feet set. Ironically, Lonnie Walker is probably their best guard at pick and pop shooting, which is why they ran so many of those guard to guard screens with him towards the end. But like LeBron's going to try to pick on Jamal and KCP a ton in the post. And the best way to cover that, I think, would just to be to hedge and recover and basically say, dare Austin Reeves or D'Angelo Russell to take a movement 3 going side to side. That said, like if LeBron starts getting the matchups he wants in the post, that's where I could see them really starting to slow down the pace of the game and bully him inside a little bit. But I agree. Like they have not faced a defense of this caliber, but the Lakers have not faced an offense of this caliber. That's why I think early in the series, these games could have some funky results. There's going to be a lot of feeling each other out to start this series.
Yeah, I think the other thing is the bench rotations very becoming interesting because Davis is basically his natural rotation is he's just going to mirror Jokic. They're both going to play all first. They're going to come back in between 10 and 8 minutes in the second and fourth, and then play the duration. But LeBron plays that stagger rotation, and that's where the Nuggets have been at their most vulnerable is whenever the Jokic is not on the floor. What's interesting in the contrary is that I think I looked up this morning, the Lakers have like a 98.7 offensive rating when AD is not on the court in the playoffs. And like, that's like, what? But that's very true. However, maybe the series is easier because you won't be going against Draymond Green, and you won't be going against the Grizzlies' very good half-court defense, and instead you're going to be going against like Jeff Green and Bruce Brown. Like LeBron, if he's going to have a big series, he'll be able to pick on that second unit because he'll have his choice of, do I want to attack a smaller Bruce Brown or a slower Jeff Green? And either one of those is a mismatch for him, even in a diminished state. If he can't beat those, then yeah, they're in trouble. They got to win those minutes. Okay. So you like Lakers in 6. I like Nuggets in 6. We'll see how it shapes out. That's Jason Tim from Volume Sports. You can find him on Hoops Tonight. Make sure to follow him on Twitter as well. It's in the episode description. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back later this week with more episodes. I think we got NHL coming up. Lots of stuff. Make sure to keep it here on the Action Network podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to check out Buckets. It's our NBA betting podcast, daily podcast all throughout the week. We've got conference finals previews up. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a good day. Until next time, let's get buckets.